Hello, 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 everyone. I'm Jack Bigadoo. You also know me as the Hood Sommelier. Welcome to The Truth is Barrel Proof. On special edition, this is a Saturday one. Right? We not usually here on Saturday. We here usually on Wednesdays or Fridays, but uh, today's special because when you are a dad, a store owner, a whiskey blender, and anything else, is you literally become very busy. So you squeeze it in. Yeah, you squeeze it and you make sure that we make it work. So um, today we're going to talk about blending. Right? We've seen a lot of people in the industry claim to be good blenders, and we've tasted the whiskey, and unfortunately, it wasn't all that. But when I had a chance to review this whiskey, if you guys have been around here, what's up? What's up? Welcome, everyone. When I had a chance to review this whiskey about a year and a half ago, I was I was like surprisingly shocked. But the only impression I had of this whiskey was this definitely a whiskey lover's dream come true because the way the blend went, it didn't seem um, made up. It seemed more, I would say, it seemed more organic. So fast forward, almost a year later, I meet the man behind the brand himself. I had a chance to talk with him, and I realized him and his wife are just the nicest people, like the nicest people you've ever met. I'm like, they're down to earth too. And I told him, I said, this is weird. Why haven't we, why haven't we got a chance to sit down and talk? And he said, let's do it. So guess what? I brought in Mr. Jonathan. I always have to be careful because people mispronounce my last name all the time. So I'm very careful when it comes to pronounce people last name because I have a French accent. So I have to go, is it Maisano or is it Mancino? So I have to make sure we are right. What's up, John?
Jack, how you doing, sir? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. This was long time coming, and this is I told you I'm like this is the least I could do. Um, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing an amazing job in the industry. You are one of those people that what you see is what you get. I made a post on my Instagram last time telling people what you see is what you get, and it is rare to actually meet somebody online and meet them in real life and go, "Oh, you are literally the same guy." So it was a pleasure meeting you in New Orleans in person, and I'm glad you're here. For the people that don't know you, Jonathan, who are you,
So
and
I am
how did
Jonathan
you end up
Maisano.
in this big world of the whiskey industry?
Yeah, so like Jack said, I'm Jonathan Maisano. I am the owner and master blender of K.Luke Whiskey Company, along with my wife Jennifer. And the name K.Luke is actually a tribute to our children. So our daughter Caitlin, who is 12, is where the K comes from, and then Luke is for our son Lucas, who is 7. So
Oh,
K.Luke is our tribute to sharing our love of whiskey and family with the world. So we always enjoy talking about it and sharing my background and experience, kind of what got me to this point. So it's been a long journey to get here for sure.
no, I can only imagine. So give me a little bit about your journey. How does one end up saying, you know what, I'm gonna be a brand owner now? How does one end up in that situation?
So I tell people, so K.Luke has only been around for a couple years, but it's been a 20 plus year journey to get to this point. So I started off working in restaurants at 16. By the time I was, we'll say 21, I really fell in love with wine and was working in a fine dining restaurant. Had an incredible sommelier in the room who was, like you said, you just this laid back approach, right? Like wanting to share his knowledge and experiences with all the rest of us. And I just immediately fell in love with wine, started hosting, wine dinners at the restaurant and getting to meet winemakers from all over the world. And then fast forward from there, in 2005, I opened up my own retail store called Maisano's Fine Wine Spirits in South Mississippi, where I live. And I had my store for 19 years. I sold it about 14 months ago to pursue K.Luke full time. But in that, almost 20 years of owning a retail store, I continued to study wine for the next decade. But then in the summer of 2014, I went to Kentucky to pick up my very first barrel. I picked out a barrel number one was a Four Roses barrel. Got to meet Jim Rutledge. And my most prized bottle from my dad is a 1979 Wild Turkey. So went up to Turkey, met Jim and Eddie. And just, I was blown away that first week, not only on whiskeys, which I tell people, until you experience your first barrel selection side by side, you just can't understand how different the whiskey is right from one barrel to another. But the people in the place got to go to Bill Samuel's home, from Maker's Mark. His son Rob is running the show there now, and it was just an incredible week. And that was it. After that, I already drank bourbon, enjoyed it anyway, but I was totally dialed in. And from there, over the next decade, before I sold my store, I picked out 415 single barrels to be sold in my one location in South Mississippi. And I got to pick almost every barrel in person with, a brand owner, a master distiller, or someone, high up in quality control. So really an unbelievable experience, which led me into to starting K.Luke a couple years ago in 21.
So I like to say you went from being the guy who distinguished flavor for people to actually being now the guy that actually is making that flavor for people.
Yeah. It was a pretty amazing journey. For me, when I picked out barrels, right, all I cared about was the whiskey in the glass, right, is what speaks to me. I don't care the age or, warehouse or any other fancy things. Of course, you want to know afterward, but all I cared about when I picked my barrels was what whiskey spoke to me. It's not a matter of good or bad. It's just what whiskey spoke to me, the layers, the complexity. What was something that I wanted to sit? If it was the last bottle of whiskey I got to enjoy, that's how I looked at picking out single barrels. And I kind of saw the change toward the end of my retail career. When I first started picking out barrels, you went solely because you loved whiskey and you wanted to do something special. And kind of toward the end, what I saw was, whiskey had taken off so much that all these people started picking barrels of bourbon just for the dollar sales, and not because they loved the whiskey or the people or the stories. And for me, that was never something I wanted to do. I wanted to travel there. I wanted to be in the warehouse. When all the fancy tasting rooms started coming on board, I told the guys, I said, look, I want to walk, when I go to Jim Beam, I want to walk the same rick house that Booker No walked and Fred No and now Freddie Jr. And I want to be immersed in it. I don't care if it's freezing cold, if it's super hot. I want to be out there thieving whiskey out of the barrels, either thieving or drilling them, just like the people that come before us, right? And really be immersed in the culture of what bourbon is. And that's always been my passion with it and my goal.
So you jump in this journey, what I like to call a really crazy journey
For
to
sure.
actually start. How does one now goes, obviously we know the name is homage to your two kids. But now, did you have a blueprint in mind? Right? Does it, like any business that you start, did you have a blueprint? Did you say, you know what, I want to focus on, blending, I want bourbon first, or you know what, let me just target whiskeys first and create something. How does one come to now? I believe on the market you have four major expressions that are on the market. Did you had a blueprint 2 years ago, or did you just went with availability, which I know a lot of people just go by whatever is offered to them is what they end up with, which for me sometimes is the mistake that a lot of blender makes, which ended up putting them in a situation where they'll blend something that they may be great blenders, but just whatever product they're presented just turn into, into crap sometime.
Right.
Or did you just go, you know what, unless they have what I want or what I imagine in my head, I'm just gonna wait and I'm gonna start with whatever I want to do first. How did we get here?
So I knew for us, like I told Jennifer, obviously selling our retail store, which was very successful and building it up for 20 years, to go out on a limb and do K.Luke on our own. It was always important to me from day one. We would never put out something that we didn't believe in 100%. So just like I picked those barrels, something that if it was the last whiskey I got to drink, that's how we look at all of our blending. We are also very fortunate. We have no outside funding. It's just Jennifer and I that own this company. So there's no one telling us like, hey, you can buy something younger or cheaper, or, we need to put out more batches, or you need to hurry up, right? It's solely based off of us putting the time in to really create something special. Like you said, when you first tasted it, this is a whiskey that's made for whiskey drinkers. And we really want some of the lot of layers, complexity. And I knew in the beginning that we could have went the easy route and just went through a bunch of single barrels, but I didn't want to do that. I knew that really to build a brand that would have longevity and be something that hopefully if Caitlin or Lucas wanted to get into, a decade or two down the road, if they enjoyed it like we do, blending was really the key. And that goes back to the sommelier, right? So starting off training wine in my in my early 20s, like we talked about in your class, right? It's all about honing in on what do I taste? What do I smell? If you don't have that experience, if you haven't tried, all these different spices or smelled them, how do you know what cinnamon or ginger or this or that tastes like? And like we talked about in your class, right? It's not always just a taste. A lot of times it's an experience. You remember like maybe being out by the ocean or being in the woods. And like I tell people, I describe like floral. A lot of times to me, it's more like after a rainstorm here in the South, it's really hot and you kind of get that wet, like especially like violets or roses, right? You kind of get that floral. It's just different, right? If you haven't experienced that, it's hard to describe. I talk about minerality in wine. People are like, well, what in the world is minerality? And I always describe it as when you play miniature golf and you're in one of those caves and the water's coming down and it's really hot, and you get that, you just kind of smell that wet stone and mineral, which, a lot of the taste comes from what you smell, aromatics. And I think all those things are super important. So I knew with K.Luke, we didn't want to just do single barrels. We really wanted to hone in the craft of like a chef, right? In reality, all blenders could potentially have the same opportunity to buy the same whiskey. But how do you make K.Luke stand out in the market? How do you make it something special? You look at it like a chef. You buy the best ingredients and then you blend them to a heightened experience, right? You don't want to have too much cream sauce or too much salinity or too much spice. But if you can bring all those notes together, a little citrus, you get this beautiful, well-rounded dish. And I always use the analogy, what makes you go back to your favorite restaurant when that chef buy the same ingredients as everyone else? It's how they execute it and the balance and the layers of complexity, and they consistently deliver a high-quality product. That's our vision behind K.Luke on every blend. I knew from the beginning we wanted to source from Kentucky and Indiana. That's where most of my background is, picking barrels the last decade. And I just think those two profiles are different enough, but they play together really well. You get some different tones from each one of those styles of whiskey. And it's been really neat for us. Now we're sourcing from 8 different distilleries, so multiple mash bills. So, we really have, I'm not really sure now, probably, 14, 15 different components to work with. So when I look at my Rolodex of barrels, I have all these different flavors because I break down every barrel by, is it fruit, but then is it red fruit? Is it dark fruit? Is it baked? Is it ripe, right? Is it all these different components? When I go to create a blend, I'm like, okay, what are we missing? Because I'll create about a dozen blends, Jennifer, I blind taste through them. It's like, okay, what did she like? What did I like? We don't discuss them until afterward. And it's like, okay, what is the blend missing? If she liked it and I didn't like it, why? What's the reasoning? And we continue to go through that process. I continue to adjust them based off our notes, one barrel at a time. And then from there, it's like, okay, these are our top 3 blends. And obviously, if both of us really like it, we know it's something special because she picks them on different things than I do, right? That's what makes whiskey so much fun. Just like wine, it's everyone has a different perception of sweet and dry and spicy and mouthfeel, right? And that's when both of us really like it. I know it's something exciting that everyone else will be excited about. And then we run blind against the best bourbons on the market because I want you to be able to pour K.Luke against anything. If you say, hey, I love, Booker's or Elijah Craig, we want K.Luke to be able to hold its own against the best bourbons on the market and earn its place. We don't want anything given to us. We want to earn our place in blind tastings. I know you're a judge on several different of these,
I made an exception for you today because I'm currently judging. So I naturally, I'm right now. I went to an event yesterday and they're like, oh, we're gonna have cigars, and I'm like, oh, I'm out. I can't smell or have anything else right now because I'm judging. So yeah, when I judge, that's what I look for. I really look for layers in the whiskey. What the intent, and I'm probably one of the slowest judge you ever find because I like to give every whiskey their opportunity, right?
Sure.
To show me who they are and to speak to me so I can actually get a chance to judge them the right way. So before I go to the next question, if I had to get into K.Luke, if somebody was just new, this is the first time that they're having your whiskey, what would it be that you will say, let's start with this is where I want to introduce you to the brand?
So for us, the silver label, this is the flagship, the small batch barrel strength. Yep. So this is really the flagship of the brand. This is something we put out every 4 months to 3 times a year. And I always tell people kind of my inspiration, like if people always ask, if you had to pick one whiskey that was the inspiration behind K.Luke, what is it? And for me, it's Four Roses Small Batch Limited Edition. The reason why.
That's a good one.
Being a retailer, I could have got any limited bourbon, to put aside for myself. And that was always the one bottle I saved for myself every year, because it was a combination of different mash bills, different yeast strains, different ages, all blended together perfectly into this harmonious layered whiskey, whether it was Jim Rutledge
Right.
doing it or Brent Elliott. And for me, that was the one bourbon that just always spoke to me every year. And I tell people this all the time. Four Roses was always a favorite. I picked 49 barrels from them, but that LE, that layer of complexity and richness and depth, that's what I'm shooting for when I blend K.Luke for Jennifer and I blind taste to ultimately pick our small batch blend for everyone else.
How many mash bill? You say is a mix of high and low rye, but how many mash bill went into this one?
So right here, batch 11. So this is a 10 barrel blend. So we ran 80% low rye mash bills and about 20% high rye. So 8 of them are low rye, 2 of them are high rye. And it changes a barrel or two in each blend. So when I'm blending, it's kind of like, okay, kind of the base recipe, but it's even like for me when I cook at home, I just kind of have an idea of where the end vision is, and it's how do we get there? What's the path and the journey to get there? So far more important for me than mash bill, age, certain distillery is trying to find the right flavors that balance each other out and create that beautiful layered whiskey. But typically you have about
this is
half
what
a dozen
60% ABV, but is on the nose is definitely a bouquet of fruits. Like literally just like putting your nose in some apple, cherries, red apple cherries, a little bit of citrus zest. Like it's a bouquet of literally a fruit salad that is just shoved in your nose. There is the spiciness of that 60% ABV. That's 120. You expect that is gonna hit you a little bit with the ethanol, but not at all. It's just this beautiful bouquet of fruit that you get on the nose right away. So
yes,
go ahead.
I was going to say, talking about the ABV, sometimes when we're tasting these and I'll tell Jennifer, what the proof is, she's like, you've got to be wrong. There's no way this is coming in at 120. She typically likes a little bit lower in proof. She also is not a real big fan of a lot of, say, 11, 12-year-old plus bourbons. She's not a big fan of that kind of dusty library book. She likes that vibrant fruit,
She
more
doesn't want
brightness to it.
the oak.
Yeah, she doesn't want it overtracting the oak for sure. She's more sensitive than I am.
And this is just, I don't know what you do differently. And hopefully by the end of this interview, I'll find out. But for all of you guys that's just joining now, this is what we are trying. This is K.Luke blending of straight bourbon. Is batch 11, is 120 proof. And I can see why you will compare this to the Four Roses LE. Now, I tell people often, and this is just my own opinion here, so y'all take it with a grain of salt. But I tell people often that we run to go pick up, brand names because they're cool. But the truth here is there are some people that are creating things that are equal or beyond that brand name sometime because it's just a perfect blend that you like. I think you've outdone yourself because compared to last year, what I've tried, this is even better.
I
And
appreciate
I've
it.
been judging, and this coming from someone who all week I've been judging whiskey. So I'm tasting them like, whoa, this is what if somebody say pour me a good bourbon. Like somebody say, hey, dude, just pour me a good bourbon. He been drinking for a while. Dude, I want to talk. Pour me a good. This is the pour me a good bourbon glass, right? There's no argument here that this is just good bourbon, right? So it brings me to the question: did you get any guidance at all to this journey? Did you reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I'm doing this for the first time. I would love some mentorship. I know Kentucky have a lot of program when it comes to blending and all those." Did you go to a distillery to go, "Hey, I know you do this." Obviously, through your journey, you've met a lot of people. So I'm assuming that you at least reach out to one person you met through your journey to go, "Hey, I think I'm crazy enough to do this. Can I get your help?" Or did you say, "Screw it. I believe in myself. I'm gonna actually do this the way I believe it was supposed to be done"?
Yes, it's a great question. So for me, because I was so fortunate over the decade of tasting barrels, I remember like the first time tasting with Chris Morris at Woodford Reserve, probably 7, 8 years ago. And that was probably my first really like blending experience. where we sat, we tasted the bourbons. He's okay, now blend A and B, then A and C. And I couldn't believe that between two barrels, the one could overwhelm or overshadow the other one, or you could blend them together and not get notes of any of the separate barrels, right? And I still go through that every time I blend. I see my vision on my tasting notes. I'm like, okay, well, if I do this, 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 and this, clearly I'm going to have a bourbon that offers this, 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 and this, and we'll taste it. And Jeffrey's like, what is this? This doesn't taste anything like what you normally would blend. But on paper, it seemed like a good idea, but then when you get the whiskeys blended together, whether the aromatics are off or the mouthfeel or the spice, or it just doesn't mesh. And again, it's the only way I do is do it by taste over and over and over again. So I didn't really reach out to anybody directly. Just like down in New Orleans, all the master distillers are down there. I got a chance to, I talk to these guys all the time. They've been incredible. I mean, I could send one of them a text message, ask a question, and they've all been, the greatest thing about this industry, everybody is so open and welcoming, whether it's your first glass of whiskey or your 10,000th glass. These guys in Kentucky have dedicated their entire life to make this America's native spirit. And they are just so open and welcoming. I mean, I couldn't believe when I went to Kentucky the first time in 2014, like Bill Samuels invited me to his home. And, Jim Rutledge is drawing graphs and explaining evaporation and heat differentials between warehouse floors. And it just, it's such a welcoming community, and everybody is so open and willing to share their experiences. And I think that's what makes this whiskey community so special.
So pretty much you kind of did it on your own.
That's it. I told Jennifer, I said, I think we're going to go for this, and here's what we're going to do, and she was extremely supportive. And, I love being in retail, but I worked 80 hours a week. So for me, we were open 72 hours a week, every holiday except for Christmas. And I always felt responsible being the business owner, that I needed to be there and personally try to wait on every customer possible. And, as the kids started to get older, I realized, just as much as I love the business, never being home for holidays, and also seeing the shift in picking single barrels. By the time I picked 400 barrels, I was totally honed in on what I wanted to do. And I knew this was the rest of my life journey was going to be involved in whiskey. So really, this has been an incredible experience, not only using my 20 plus years of my own palate, something me and Jennifer get to do together, but spending more time with family. I mean, just all around, it has been something I never thought I'd sell my store, and it has been an incredible experience to do K.Luke, put these blends in, and to have master distillers, people like yourself, people who have traveled the world and taste whiskeys from all over, come up and go, wow, this is something really special.
I tell you what, you're here because of that, because honestly, I either tell people we are avant-garde on what we're doing, or you're doing something so special we have to talk about it. And I don't think you get enough credit. Obviously, you're a young brand, which makes sense. A lot of people will be leery. They're like, I don't know about young brand. But I tell people often, and this is all my whiskey and bourbon nerds, is you will have one to taste, a Four Roses LE, a Pappy Lot B, or a Weller 107, or a Wild Turkey 13. You want it, you will have been the guy who want to taste it, own it, have 3 bottle of it before everyone knew it was cool. Right? Every whiskey nerd knows that. I wish I knew about this first before everybody else, because then it is not over. Once it blows up, I'm unable to find it, because now that's your favorite. You love it, but you can't find it. And that's what happened when a new brand comes in. The reason why I love bringing new brands in, and especially somebody who does a good job, is the opportunity to tell people, this is your chance. This is your chance to be able to grab something that is so special that 3 years from now, when Jonathan doesn't have anything anymore, where people say, oh my God, do you remember Batch 11? Do you remember, this? It happened to every major brand I've known. Penelope was the same thing. Smoke Wagon was the same thing. Everybody that put in the great work in, you wish you had what they were offering at a time where they started, where you can say, if you haven't tried this, oh my God, you don't know K.Luke if you weren't there when he was making this. So this is the reason why we sitting here and having this conversation. So from that introductory pour, what will be the next thing that you want people to know as far as your progression continues?
Yeah, so from there, we like I said, that's the flagship. But our next one usually I like to taste and order would be the toasted bourbon, so the orange label. So this is something we put out every 6 months, so twice a year. And so for me, kind of going back to the chef thing, going back to tasting, again, when I was picking out single barrels, I tasted more than 1,600 barrels straight from the barrel. So again, I tell people, even though the brand is only 3.5 years old, I've had an incredible opportunity of experience to taste an unbelievable depth of whiskey, an incredible amount of barrels from every distillery. I've walked all the rick houses. I've climbed through the floors. Um, when you get to taste with every master still the last decade, it's been a pretty incredible experience. So our toasted barrel, so for me, kind of going back to finishes, a lot of times I love them or hate them, right? Because the problem I run into with a lot of finishes is two things. One, they're over extracted on the finish. And two, if you cut them to proof, you get so much of the finish, you don't taste the traditional, whatever the core whiskey is. And for us, we spend so much time blending whiskeys. And on these toasted barrel products, we actually blend them differently because I know that we're going to pick up more of that sweetness, richness from the whiskey. So we might get a little bit more spice heavy in the core blend. So it offsets, right? It's all about flavor. If you have a great dish and you cover it with a sauce that totally takes away from the main, if you have Wagyu beef or fresh caught ahi tuna and the sauce completely covers up the beautiful fresh protein, what's the sense, right? What was the point of going out and spending the money to have a better quality base if you're going to cover it up? So for us with the toasted barrel, we want that just to be an accent, just another seasoning, just another spoke in the wheel of flavor development and complexity, but not overwhelm it. So starting with batch 3 in our toasted bourbon, we're tasting batch 4 today, but starting with batch 3, we got to use Kelvin Cooperage barrels. We've been on the wait list for 2 years, and in batch 3, it opened up for us to be able to use them. We're now exclusively all Kelvin barrels. So on this batch 4, we created same thing, 10 barrel core base of blend. And then how do you not overwhelm it with the secondary barrels? We did no additional char because we already have great aged stock in the core whiskey. So I didn't want to add any more oak. We didn't need any more wood spice or oakiness to it. We just wanted to add that creme brulee and toasted marshmallow and that kind of sweet, decadent richness and mouthfeel. So out of the 10 barrels of bourbon, we refilled 7 Kelvin Cooperage barrels just with the angel share and evaporation rate, 10 to 7. 5 of those barrels were medium toast, no additional char, and then 2 heavy toast, no additional char. So we blend the 10 barrels together, filled those 7 barrels. We tasted it 2 months, and then we decided, okay, how much longer do we think we want to go before we retaste again or go ahead and bottle it? We decided to bottle this one at 10 weeks. We felt 10 weeks, 2 months, we're like, okay, this has pretty much got the complexity and depth without over extracting it. And that's the whole goal. Again, just another seasoning component.
You are very, very I don't know. I don't think I can give you all this credit. I need to give some to your wife because the finesse of the nose it's a woman touch. I don't think this is you because the way you said she doesn't like the over oak and thing, this nose is perfectly beautiful, right? That's like the signature almost of what you put out. If it's like I feel like some people believe, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong. If I can't introduce myself correctly to you, what's the point of continuing this conversation, right? And the nose is such a perfect introduction. You want to continue the conversation. That creme brulee is spot on, like dialed in, spot on. Like when I was nosing, that's why I haven't taken a sip. It's just, I'm like, what dessert does it remind me of? And in my head, I was just racking it. I'm like, no, it's not chocolate. It's something burnt. And I'm like, I can't, something sweet and burnt. And clearly, creme brulee. That is like that spot on.
But for me, so like through the creme brulee, I also get like this raspberry note to it. So again, it's, we put a lot of time into trying to find this, like you described in batch 11, right? This beautiful fruit profile with some citrus peel. So we want to have that creme brulee, but it's like, wait a minute, what is that? Like if I get through the creme brulee, it's like there's fresh raspberries on the plate, or maybe a little bit of like reduced down raspberry sauce that kind of complements it, right? Where you kind of smell that fruit as you're taking the bite of creme brulee. It's just a hint of it in there with it.
Yeah.
Or you kind of get like some blackberry jam.
Mm. Yeah, when it comes to toasted, that mouthfeel, that mouthfeel is probably it's a long conversation on the mouthfeel. It's interesting, intriguing, nice pepperiness. Is it literally makes you salivate. So that those jam notes, right? When you go raspberry and that little bit of and it create that kind of that sour effect in your mouth where you're like, I need another sip. I need another sip.
Right.
I'm salivating
Yeah.
right now. Like I need another sip. The mouthfeel is just the tannin. You would think the tannin will be overshadowed, but they're not. They're coming back, dial back in more like almost like the tannin are teasing your palate to have another sip. And believe it or not, this
And
is
again, I think
59.2% ABV. And so far, we are two samples in, and it does not drink like it at all. Like not one bit. It does not drink like it at all.
and that's a great point. People get so honed in on proof, right? Oh, if it's higher, it's got to be better. If it's older, it's got to be better. If it's this, it's got to be better. If it costs more than $200, it's got to be better. And it's like, no, what speaks to you? I tell people at the end of the day, no matter what Jack tells people, no matter what Jonathan tells people, what speaks to you in your glass when you're drinking the whiskey? I don't care what the price is. I don't care how limited it is. It either speaks to you or doesn't, right? And for me, like you said, whiskey, that whole round experience, when you know you have a good bottle of whiskey, is you get these beautiful aromatics on the nose, which of course draws you into wanting to have a sip. And then your front of your palate is different than the mid palate, where you get this kind of mouth coating. And then the finish should be balanced. It shouldn't be over oaky, not too spicy, also not too sweet. But if you can get all those things in check, then it's like, wait a minute, I got to have another sip, right? Because it's like, what is going on here? I want to just keep enjoying it. And then if you get into having like enjoying a cigar, or you've got a group of friends together, then that's really where the fun really, um, because then you just keep experiencing it over and over again. They're like, well, wait a minute, let me go back and grab batch 3 and batch 2, and let's go back and forth between these, right? And that's where we really get to have fun, is when you're tasting and exploring. It's like, wow, and I can really see the difference between these batches side by side and the layers of complexity.
I tell you what, so far, definitely. So do you kind of already imagine what your average batch um number of barrel will be, or do you try to limit it at just a certain amount so you're not doing too much? Because to be able to be dialed in, right, your whiskey is so dialed in, to be able to be this dialed in, obviously you cannot work with a bigger amount of barrel. You kind of have to draw it down. So what's the average batch, number of barrel we looking at?
So these are both 10 barrel blends. Here lately, most of our batches run in 10 barrels, especially on barrel strength toasted barrel. And that's a great question. People keep asking me, well, how do you scale to demand? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I've talked to, brands the next tier up above me that may be blending like 30 or 50 barrels. Basically they're like, well, at some point you have to blend to, they're close enough, right? Like if you pull a run of barrels, same day's distillate, age side by side, they're going to be close enough to be batch representative. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I only know how to taste one barrel at a time in the blend, just one barrel at a time, barrel to barrel, because there's too much variance. If one thing I've learned tasting 2,000 barrels now straight from the barrel is there's so much magic that happens in the wood, and every barrel is so different. I just don't believe that you can tell me this barrel and this barrel are close enough. I could blend them without tasting them. So that's a great question. I don't know what the ceiling is. Is it 12 barrels? Is it 20? We typically increase by 1 or 2 barrels at a time, and I'm not sure where that ceiling is. And that's why people ask, well, with all the success, all the awards, why haven't you expanded to more markets? I don't know what my capability is as far as tasting. So we're in 6 states currently, looking to expand into Texas. Will be state number 7, which is a massive state, right? They could probably
market. That's a huge market.
Yeah, so I'm not ever going to blend more barrels just for the sake of having more sales. If I don't feel I can blend a bigger batch, then I'll just stop. Whether it's 12 barrels, 14, 20, whatever that number is, we'll either put out more releases or just be
Always
it is what
quality.
it is. That's it. Always quality. I don't care about anything else. Bardstown Bourbon Company, where we do all of our bottling, all of our rebarreling at, has been incredible to work with. They're willing to, if I say, hey, like, I plan to do this other release, but I'm just not ready, or I don't feel the blend's not where I want it to be. I need more time. They've been incredible to work with. And because again, if I can't put out something that when you buy it off the shelf, if you're going to go out and spend, $110, $120, it can't be good. It has to be great. And I don't expect anyone to buy a bottle of K.Luke and just think it's mediocre. We want you to taste the love and the time, the months we've spent to craft each batch. And then something special when your friends come over, like you said, and you're like, hey, we're going to have 6 pours tonight. I want K.Luke to be something that's in that conversation of something you want to share with your friends when you really want to have a good time with bourbon and focus on the layers of complexity. So quality is everything.
I agree. And I feel it. So you blend amazing bourbon. You have low and high rye. Then you decide to play with finishes. What in the hell make you do that?
Well, so when we get to the Cabernet, I'll talk a little bit more about it. Especially, we'll do this toasted rye next, just because the oiliness, the mouthfeel of the Cabernet. But sometimes it's about, well, you've had so many expressions that didn't fit what you were looking for. It's like, well, what's my interpretation of how you should finish a whiskey, right? Like, what have I seen that works over the last 20 years, and what have I seen that doesn't work, and how do we find that balance? That layered complexity in everything we do? And the same thing with finishes, and all I do is do it by taste, right? It's like, how do we get there? But next up, we'll do our batch 4 toasted rye, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit more about the finishing, especially that Cabernet finish.
So how do you have a toasted rye? Did you proceed the same thing with Calvin, or how did we get to a toasted rye?
So, with the toasted rye, one thing I hear all the time in the market, I'm sure you hear the same thing when I talk to people and do tastings, is I don't like rye. I'm like, okay, well, what do you not like about it, right? And there's two answers I get from people. One is they're either like too herbaceous, whether that's minty or dill notes, right? Typically think of Indiana, or what people typically think of something like a traditional Kentucky rye, very dry, very spice driven, pulling all the moisture out of your palate. It's too much. It's too overpowering. I picked a lot of barrels from Peerless, and Jennifer loved the rye barrels I picked from Peerless, but she didn't like a lot of other, especially a lot of other Kentucky ryes. I'm okay, well, what makes Peerless different, right? It's softer, it's sweet mash, it's just more delicate. So with our rye, we set out to do the same thing. Batch 1 and 2 were only Indiana because I couldn't find the right Kentucky partner, but started with batch 3 and continuing on with batch 4 that we're tasting today. Again, this is Kentucky and Indiana rye. And again, it's all about finding that balance. We wanted up front to have like this beautiful kind of candied citrus, some floral tones. I live down here in the South where we have honeysuckles everywhere. And when you walk down a path, there's honeysuckles growing on, a fence line. You just smell that beautiful aromatics. But then Kentucky also adds something special. You kind of get more dark chocolate, more richness, spice, but you got to keep it in check. And then on the toasted barrel, we did not want to overwhelm the more delicate notes we're looking for. So we actually take our Kelvin barrels from our toasted bourbon. Once we dump those barrels to create this product, we take those one-time used barrels and then we age our rye in them. Because again, we're looking for more. When I'm buying rye barrels, I'm looking for delicate floral, citrus, brighter tones. And we didn't want to add too much toast where it overpowered that, took away from it. Every now and then I'll hear a little negative about, well, there's not enough toast on your toasted products. I'm like, well, to me, I don't just want to taste toast. I don't want to have a whiskey and go, yeah, this is toasted, but Is it bourbon? Is it rye? What's the mash? Well, I have no idea. I can't tell. Just also gets toasted notes.
I mean, for me, it's that just middle. Definitely for people that you have expectation when you walk into a rye, and here that expectation is a little more tamed. There's some fruitiness that are coming through on the nose. Not just that, it's almost like putting your head in a bush of just, mint and just high spice and whatnot. And this expression is actually, again, 57% ABV. So with a rye, you probably are looking at a lot, but obviously it's very, very tamed. It has that nice touch to it.
Yeah, and again, it's just about finding the right barrels to start with, right? It's how do you find the right, how many barrels from Indiana, how many from Kentucky? what levels of toast. And again, the only thing I do is do it by tasting and play with them and taste through these ryes, and then run them against, some of the most famous other toasted ryes or just ryes in general on the market. But again, it's, we want our name to be mentioned with the best whiskeys out there, but we also want to have our own lane. We know what we like. We know what we want to go home and drink and share with our friends. And like I tell people when I was picking out barrels, it's something where you begin to trust and believe in me and Jennifer, or you don't like our style of whiskey and it's not for you, and that's fine too. But if you believe in us and if you're going to go out and spend your hard-earned money to buy a bottle of K.Luke, we want to have that layered round experience on all of our expressions across the board. And the rye is something we're going to do just once a year. It'll come out we'll bottle in late June for July, but that'll be the only release moving forward of rye a year. So it'll be a little bit more limited out there. And part of that is there's only so much time of the day. I can only do so many blends, can only do so many things. We're getting ready to release our cast finish single barrel program starting here in about a month. So, I've been creating the blends for those and the secondary barrel aging on those. And then we want to bring our 100 proof, which I think you probably tried the first time, our small batch back out for just something that's more kind of an everyday, quality, a lot of layers and rich mouthfeel, but something a little bit lower proof, a little more approachable. You can do in cocktails. So we're hoping to bring that back out for fourth quarter. So Jennifer's like, remember, there's only so much time in the day. You can only taste
Correct.
so much and do so much, and still get to spend some time at home too, right? So it's all about balance. Jennifer's very good at keeping the spreadsheets and the calendar aligned, and her background is actually in finance, so she is super dialed in with spreadsheets. She's got me everything I need to know is on my computer. I have all my handwritten notes, but then everything else, if I want to know age, mash bill, where the barrels are stored, when did I have samples pulled, anything I need to know about the barrels is all in the spreadsheet, which I can never do. I'm more of being out in front of the people, and she loves sitting in front of the computer running numbers. So we're a perfect complement to each other business-wise.
And this rye definitely is for, if you're afraid of ryes, but you can drink barrel proof, this rye definitely is for you. Because for me, it's a little bit more of those things that I'm very particular about the rye that I go for. And in cocktails, I don't care. But when it comes to rye, because a lot of rye give me heartburn, so I get really, really leery about the type of rye. But this rye, the only time you feel that kick is literally only mid to finish, where you actually can sense those herbaceous note that come. But the beginning is very sweet, very mellow, very approachable, even with a high proof. So again, I can see the intentionality, and sometimes it's good just for people to know what was the intention behind something, and it makes people's life easier, right?
Yeah, we wanted more of a bourbon drinker's rye, right? Where if you're like, I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for bourbon or rye tonight, you can pour a K.Luke toast rye and be like, okay, that's kind of the best of both worlds. And like you said, you kind of get that little bit of herbaceous. So for me, mid palate, I get like a thin mint cookie. I get more like mint oil and dark chocolate, but it's not so much like you said, like you're chewing on fresh mint, where it's so overwhelming that all you get is mint. And I'm not a dill fan in rye at all. If I taste a rye that's dill, that's not for me.
Oh, absolutely. So, a lot of people are asking a question about distribution on Instagram, and obviously here also, obviously, Richie here is a fan of the brand. So obviously you have limited distribution. Why didn't you go the route of what every brand is doing? It's like, oh, let's go to DC, and then from DC we're just gonna pass it on to everyone. But you wanted to make sure, is it because of quantity, because of availability, or just wanting to make sure that the people that have known you for a while are able to actually get their hands on it? What is the...
So I think a little bit of all those things, Jack. So for me, one, I can only taste so much, right? So we had to start off with 4 barrel blends. We've grown to 10. We specifically picked states close to home because I love to be able to travel, love to be able to go meet people, love to go to events. We don't have enough products, so I tell people when we go to a store, I want you to carry K.Luke because you believe in K.Luke and you believe in Jonathan and Jennifer Maisano and our palates. So we've kind of slowly added on more states. So now we're in Mississippi, Louisiana, most recently Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Wyoming. So we're looking at Texas right now. And we have a couple other states kind of behind Texas. But people reach out every day saying, hey, I wish you were in my local state. But like I said, I can only blend so much. And I refuse to make a bigger batch just for the sake of sales. We do not want anything with our quality to slip. We want to continue to offer something above your expectation as far as layers go. And also, when we go into a new market, I want to make sure we can fulfill the stores that are carrying our brand and meet the demand before we move on to the next one. You see brands all the time; they'll come into a market and then like, yeah, now we're moving on to Texas or California, and now we forgot about these other three states we went into. They're smaller. We started with. We don't ever want to do that. We want to slowly build up our on and off premise counts. Make sure we can provide for them each batch and make sure we have the right quantity going into each state. And then how we get more distribution around the country, we sell through Sealbox and Shared Pour. Both of them have a little bit left of the batch 11 and batch 4 toasted. Sealbox has a little bit of the Keen and Cab. They're both sold out of the rye. And then we also on Taste Select Repeat, he has a little bit of our batch 3 toasted bourbon and our batch 10 barrel strength. So those
So
online
you
retailers
call
like DC are able
all
to ship
three
you.
that are like the biggest hitter in the industry. So if you're on TSR or Sellbacks, those two already, you literally there's no way, I mean, Sellbacks have been in the game for a long time. So if something is on Sellbacks, I'm already excited. So far, so far, I would tell everybody, you want a whiskey for a long day whiskey that you can sit down and enjoy. I promise you, this is it. This is the one. This right here is it. You want a whiskey for dessert? This is it. This for me, this is dessert. This is even if it's hot outside on ice, will still work. I've had some water added to it after I've had some water added with it. I'm like, wait a minute, I like that. I like that. So for me, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So
That's a great point too, Jack. I didn't mention that about, that's something else we also test. I also taste our bourbons kind of over ice, with a little bit of water. Again, I mean, we're only in springtime and it was 89 degrees here in South Mississippi today, heading out to the baseball field with my son earlier. So when you're a year-round bourbon drinker, I love my wine, but I drink bourbon year-round. I want something, if I feel like having it over ice, cooled off a little bit, it's got to have that mouthfeel and viscosity to stand up to that. If I want to pour a double of like the batch 11 over a big cube of ice, I'm cooking on my green egg. I love to grill outside. I love to cook, as we talked about in the class. Cooking is another fun experience that should be enjoyable. And I love to sit and have a glass of wine or have a glass of whiskey. But when it's hot outside, I'm going to drink it over a big cube of ice. And if the whiskey doesn't have the mouthfeel and the viscosity to hold up to that, it doesn't do you any good. And also, you can always proof your whiskey down a little bit. A little splash of water, a little piece of ice. Maybe on a Tuesday night, I want something a little bit more mild. I can still drink batch 11, dial it back, but you can't go the other way. Once you have something low in proof, you can't raise the experience.
I definitely agree. I think
So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Every time I try any whiskey, I always will put it on. I call it the test of water. I have I have two ways. I always test it. I have my little pipette always next to me. I have some water, that neutral water that I always will use, or I will leave a little bit of splash of that in and splash a little bit of water in to see what is it that we're looking at. How is it that? How does that work for me? And so far, I'm I, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Thanks, sir. Richie, yeah, back to your question, man. We'd love to make it out to California at some point, but like I said, it's slow and steady to make sure we can deliver the quality. But at least those online guys can get to you. And great thing about Sealbox, if you're a pro member, you get free shipping. So we have a lot of whiskey groups and clubs. I know that'll do that, kind of go in together and buy a bunch of bottles, and so that helps out too. Something great that Blake offers.
And if you see something that you like, obviously, if you see something that you like, I will advise you to check out, K.Luke Whiskey Company. That's the website, and you can go there, and from there, it can take you to your retailer based on the state you're in. You can actually see what you need, but that's the website. You can't get it wrong. Just go check out what they have, latest batch or whatever. You find something that catch your eyes. Get to read the story of Jonathan and his family. What this is as American dream as we can have. It's truly them. You passionate about something, you find something, you put your mind, thought, you put your personality in who you are, because every single whiskey here tells me that yes, you, this is you. This is not uh drawn out things that someone told you 20% of this, 30% is gonna make it. He has the whiskey has
So,
personality, and we don't find that often. So let's talk about your latest or your last release that we have. You playing with finishes, which I'm 100% a giz finish guy. So I'm gonna take some convincing here to figure out what's happening.
I, I'm with you most of the time as well, and I think that was part of my original one to go out and do this was to show that if you do it right and you put the time in the balance. So this is a limited release. We only comes out in the fall each year. This is our K.Luke Cabernet Reserve. So I've known Michael Keenan, Jennifer and I probably for, I don't know, 14 years now. Great guy. They're on third generation. His son is now involved in the winery. They've been there 50 years, small family owned up on Spring Mountain in Napa Valley. So Spring Mountain is the mountain range between Sonoma and Napa when you come over. So high elevation. So the grapes, have to struggle to grow down to get water. So you get a lot of trace elements out of the soil, which adds a lot of complexity, a lot of richness. And I reached out to Michael and I said, Michael, I want to do this special project. I want to do a bourbon lay down your Cabernet barrels and make it a limited release. Michael said, great. What do I need to do for you? So talking about the barrels, his reserve cab, he does half French oak, half American oak. So we did the same thing. And I said, well, Michael, do you mind if I use, your name, Keenan? Do you mind if I use some relation to the wine label? He said, not at all. And then I was like, well, Mike, what if I messed it up, right? Now, this is your family name, 50 years tied into this as well. And he said, look, I've known you for forever. You've got a great palate. You love wine. You love whiskey. I've had your releases. They're amazing. We have no doubt you put out something special. So when you actually see the bottle of wine, you can see the resemblance to our whiskey label. He actually let me we use the same label color, the reserve in the corner, just like he did. Pretty awesome. He believed in me enough to let Jennifer and I tie in his brand to ours to do this special release. So this was a 10-barrel blend of bourbon. We refilled 8 Cabernet barrels. So again, half French oak, half American oak. And the second round, this one that came out in November, December last year, we aged it for 8 months in these wine barrels. But how do we know that the whiskey is going to work with the wine, right? How do we know that it's not going to get overwhelmed? How do we know it's not just another finished whiskey that you don't really want to drink? The only way I knew how to do it was by taste. So I actually created a dozen different blends that I thought would make sense with Cabernet. We opened up a bottle of his reserve cab, blended just a splash into each one of those whiskey blends, let them oxidize, basically trying to mimic where we thought the whiskey would be 6 months down the road in barrel. Again, I only know how to do it by taste the hard way. I don't know how to do it, based off of just throwing something in there and hoping for the best. And then Jennifer and I tasted it 3 months, and every month after that, we find the right blend of the core whiskey and the wine notes, not to overwhelm each other. This batch too came in 117.4 proof. It was bottled on November 7th of 24.
It's unlike every other one. This one, the spice level is much higher on the nose when you actually approach it immediately. Okay.
And that's a good point too, Jack, about the spice kind of coming through. We knew that the wine was going to add all this fruit and some sweetness and richness. So how do you make sure you offset that in the core blends? You have to have a little more spice, right? You have to have the right structure of core whiskey that's going to complement the wine complement the whiskey, and not be too top heavy one way or the other. So again, it just comes down to time and putting the work in and really trying to build something special where you get that baked fruit, but you get those spice tones and you still know you've got bourbon in the glass, right? It's not just, you're not just smelling and going, oh, that's sweet fruit driven. And I'm not sure what the core product even is.
Mm. Now I want to try the wine. I want to.
All right, next time we get together, we'll have to drink a
Yeah,
bottle of
I
this wine
want to try the
together.
wine now because the character it gives your whiskey. Since I've tried how you blend normally, and now that I can taste the finish, it kind of give me an image of what you've done here. But that finish, obviously, on my palate tells me all I need to know about the wine itself. The front is your whiskey. It's like there's that deep 80%, 90%. I used to have this company that make 70/20 cacao with chili inside chocolate. And this is what it reminds me of. It's like dark, dark fruit note. The sweetness is not like brown sugar, it's more like date sweet. And now you get those
Absolutely.
gushy. I don't know if you've had French red grapes because they grow up almost mountain and they actually get really the sugar staying. They just gush in your mouth and like this is what it reminds you. That's I'm like now I have to try the wine because in my head I'm like the bourbon, spiciness was slowly toned in and embraced by that cab, and even the cab itself, the dryness, the tannin of it's also showing on the side here, where I'm like, oh, I wonder what the cab itself tastes like.
Yeah, it's almost like if you took a date and you put like blackberry jam and then put it on the grill, right, and let it just kind of melt and pick up that little bit of. Again, I use a green egg, so you get that natural wood smoke where you just get this. I don't know. I love the viscosity and the mouthfeel, and to me, there's enough oak tannins to know it's Cabernet, but they're not offensive or overwhelming. You still get this like caramel and like toffee pudding and just this richness, mouth coating, and then you get that reduced black fruit on the back end. And then, like you said, those tones of spice in there. And when you drink this Cabernet, again, it's mountain fruit. The grapes are small, they're intense. They picked up a lot of trace elements. And I really think that shines through. And Michael King first tasted this with me. He was sitting right next to me. We had a dinner in Louisiana at an Italian restaurant. I got to watch him have his first glass. And he goes, "Oh my God, I taste my Cabernet. I taste that beautiful, dense, but elegant mountain fruit in this whiskey." And it was so cool to watch Michael drink it the first time, and just know that if you had the wine, you're like, wow, I can really taste that characteristic of what Michael does and why he's one of my favorite wine producers. What's so special in this whiskey? So
No,
really cool
definitely. This is
collaboration.
so you have this four major release out, one special project with the wine, a ride that actually definitely made people talk. And these two bourbon that for me is your masterpiece so far that is on the market. What's next? What's next for the family? I wouldn't say what next for you. What's next for the family? What's
So
what
what I'm
should we
really
look for
excited
now
about.
that we know what you can do and what you're putting out on the market? What's next?
So the very next thing coming out again in about a month, I'm heading to Bardstown week after next, and we've got customers coming there to taste through a range of cask finished single barrels. We did things very old world style, right? Armagnac, Cognac, Tawny Port, Pinot de Charente. We've got a Sauterne finished rye.
Okay.
So we've got these different, again, just like the Keenan, I created this beautiful balanced blend. And then same thing, right? I only know how to do it the hard way. I only know how to do it by taste. I have all those secondary products, right? Because I love drinking wine too. And I created these blends. I blended in a little bit of Armagnac, a little bit of Cognac, and a little bit of, Sauterne and then Pedro Jimenez. We let them sit. We found the right blend that spoke to all those secondary finishes. And we laid down a small batch blend into all these different single casks. And now those become K.Luke cask finished single barrel expressions. So we've got different stores and groups from around the country coming out to Bardstown to pick out barrels. So in about a month, you'll see I'll post a list online where each one of them ends up. So very excited about that. That's something we're going to just do once or twice a year in small numbers. But again, I might love the Armagnac. You might love Sauterne finished rye. So I want people to be able to taste through a variety of them and say, wow, this is the one that speaks to me. And I want to buy this whole barrel or half barrel from my location to make this a K.Luke single barrel. But it also has the background of being a K.Luke small batch blend that was secondary cask finish to make it a single barrel. I didn't want to just put, from one straight barrel to another, because there's lots of people doing that very well out there. What makes K.Luke special is again, my 20 years of experience, my palate, what Jennifer and I find special in blend, and then from there take that core blend and fill up these different single casks to be single barrel releases. So that'll be the next thing you'll see coming up online, just before our batch 12 barrel strength and toast barrel rye bottling. So very excited about those.
Um, Question I ask every brand is I can speak till my face is blue about everything that here. If you haven't seen them, these are the colors, these are the brands, these are what you should look for on the market. But I will tell you right now is the question I ask every brand is how can we support? Obviously, from this interview, if you're watching it now, watching the recast, you can tell the type of quality and type of product that John and his family are putting on the market. I mean, this is top notch. If I'm comparing this whiskey right here to Four Roses LE, you know exactly that this is top notch. So how can we support you, right? How can the people watching right now, what can we do to support your endeavor?
Yeah, so if you want to keep up with us, like Jack said, you can go on our website. You can join up for our email newsletter when we do tastings and events. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. Just starting to put out a little bit on YouTube, which if I linked it correctly, hopefully this stream to my YouTube channel as well. But I'm not
Yeah,
sure if
we'll
that we'll
see.
see if
We'll
that works
see.
out or not.
Normally it should allow you to stream it. Yeah.
But but really for me, it's like if you want to try, our traditional small batch barrel strength, and you love, Old Carter and Booker's and Four Roses LE, I want you to take a bottle of our bourbon, get your friends together, and run a blind tasting, and then send me your feedback. Let me know what you think. It's really neat. We'll get people like, hey, we took, Stag and Booker's and this and that. We ran a blind tasting, and out of 30 guys, 80% picked K.Luke, and most of them had never had it before. But we ran a blind tasting. I think most importantly, enjoy the whiskey, share it with your family and friends. Um, I think people get so caught up on, having limited bottles and never wanting to open them. I think, Freddie Johnson, Buffalo Trace said the best, right? If you don't share those bottles and have the memories, is far more important than just having
Right.
those sealed bottles. So get great bottles of bourbon, have fun, enjoy them, and share with your family and friends. And we appreciate you guys taking the time to hear about all the love and time we put into K.Luke. Again, it's a couple month process on each blend. We're not rushing just to put it out there. We're not trying to just sell whiskey for the sake of selling it. We really want it to be something special that you and your friends and family can believe in as much as Jennifer and I do. So,
Like I mentioned, John, when I met you, I definitely say salt from the earth. You're just a regular dad that just happened to have a great palate and love whiskey. That's that's what it is. And I mentioned this before. Every whiskey nerd wish they found the best whiskey that people 2, 3, 5 years are talking about. Everybody wants a bottle. They can find it. They want to find it before everyone else. I challenge you, as my viewers, as people that watch or watching the recast, grab yourself this bottle. And I need to show it to you one more time. Grab yourself this bottle. Just for me. Just grab yourself this bottle and tell me what you think. I want to know if I'm crazy or John and I are just hyping things up, but grab yourself a bottle and just tell us what you think because I'm really curious to see if for me I definitely need to go find my own bottle of this because this is going to be one of those bottles where in 5 years from now I can pull out and say I bet you I can beat any of these whiskey with just this one. And obviously so we love and support small family owned businesses and keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you did. Not everybody that have tried this has has succeeded at it. Even the people that lie to themselves that they succeeded at it, they may have their first round and out, but after that no one is buying that bottle. But I feel like this is something that will create a fandom, that will create a following for people to actually come and truly try what you have going on. Keep plugging away, keep doing it, and this is now your home. So if you ever have anything to say about K.Luke, this is your home now. You can come or sit down and see what comes up, what's new, and if there's any news about your single barrel finishes, I would love to hear more about what came out of that project to see what is it that is out there. Again, the website, I'm going to display it, is KLUKE Whiskey Company.com. Go on it and follow them also on Instagram, KLUKE Whiskey Company. Just go in, and if you have any questions, send it to me or send them the DM. They're pretty good at answering messages. But
Yeah, if you reach out to any of the channels, it's me who answers all of them. So I try my best to get right back to them. One more, Jack, I like to mention also, I've gotten to go to Jack's kind of his seminar talking about flavor profile and just describing about, what you look for in a whiskey. And I think that's really important for people to get a chance to go to your seminars and tastings, is just being dialed into what speaks to you. I can't stress that enough, right? If you don't know what ginger tastes like, if you don't know, Jack led a great panel down in New Orleans where we actually tasted different seasonings and spices, because again, if you've never had it, how can you find it in the whiskey or food or wine? And I think that's really important. That's kind of what drew me to your channel, early on, Jack, was just your down to earth, again, just this, never talking down to people, want to bring them along the experience, right? Want to share your lifelong journey of how you got to this point. And I think that it's so important for people to just have fun and just enjoy it. And I definitely encourage all of my followers that are watching this to, if you see Jack coming to a town near you for a seminar or tasting event, go check it out. And it's a fun, laid back, nothing pretentious.
absolutely,
Just have a good time
end
with it,
of
right?
May, I'll be in DC. We're bringing African food and whiskey cocktails together because obviously we want to introduce you to new flavors. So if you're in the DC area, Afrofusion is coming to DC. Check out link on my bio, get a ticket, and yeah, let's have a good time. For me, it's always about, I love that you talk about cooking when it comes to whiskey, because layer of flavors don't happen if you don't know what's happening in the kitchen, to be able to build something that is amazing on somebody's palate. I can tell it's clear, it's right here. But again, the challenge here, I would call it the K.Luke challenge here, is grab yourself a bottle and please talk shit about it if you don't believe what we said. I would love to hear it, because for me, any
Absolutely.
any talk about K.Luke is good talk, as long as we are talking about it. And I had to pour myself a little more of this, because I told you, this is, grab yourself this. This is what you want. Grab one of these and come tell me what you think. It's on Sealbacks and is also on TSR and whomever have it at this time, because I'm surprised it's not sold out by now. Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Jack. I always appreciate your just easygoing, very straightforward approach to whiskey. And again, I think if more people could have these kind of talks about whiskey in general, not necessarily K.Luke, just whiskey in general, the people, the stories, the history, and have a good time with it, then we'll all continue to thrive and enjoy all whiskey has
Absolutely.
to
Till
offer.
next
So
time, everyone. Thanks for watching. Again, go on the website,